Hello.
Ready to go. Thank you very much. It is actually 7:01 on February 18th, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Town of St. Andrews Planning Advisory Committee. We are here in the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex here in the council chambers. Recording of attendance, I noticed Mr. Sims is away for this month's meeting, and we've lost a member that we will be recruiting later. So online, we have Ms. Charters as well as Xanders here at the table, and Mr. Spear and Mr. McKinnon from the town here at our meeting. Welcome, everyone. We have the agenda in front of us. Would anyone care to make a motion on that agenda? Thank you. Seconded. Thank you very much. No changes to that agenda. If not, all those in favor of adopting the agenda in front of us, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All hands up. Thank you. That agenda is approved. And as we get started, we recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Bezpatomankati people, and we officially welcome you all to our meeting. Looking for a declaration of conflict of interest, if any exist on the files tonight. There being none, we will carry on. Confirmation of minutes. We have minutes in front of us from way back in December, December 17th. If we've all had an opportunity to review those, I'll entertain a motion to adopt those minutes. Thank you, Ms. Mercero. Any seconder? Mr. Kerr, thank you very much. Any edits, changes, questions? If there are none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of adopting the minutes from December 17th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And again, all hands up. Mr. Tanner, was that a hands up? Oh, okay. That's okay. That's right. All right. So we have a little amendment to the minutes. With Mr. Tanner being absent at the December meeting. No, you were here at the December meeting. You were here at the December meeting. I'm thinking of last month. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of last month. Oh, certainly. We're going to just call a little recess. And if there are no others, I'll ask for a motion for the amended agenda or amended minutes from December 17th. All right, second. You're all right with those amendments? Thank you very much. All right, so now we're looking at the amended minutes from December 17th. All those in favor of adopting those minutes, please signify by saying aye. Thank you very much. Thanks for bringing those housekeeping items to our attention. Appreciate that. All right, so as we move along, We have the presentation today is actually PAC 260217, and that is the Planning Advisory Committee Annual Report for 2025. Just a little recap of all the activities and notable items from 2025. If everyone's had a chance to review, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them here on the fly. If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the annual report for 2025. Yes, please.
I recall, and maybe these got moved under variance applications, but under signage, I recall we did the cannabis MB as well as I think the hotel across from.
We may have considered them a variance applications.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't put
I think there was a law
I
office
didn't.
one and yeah, the cannabis
Yeah,
MB
I
one
didn't.
and-
I see the
Okay.
sign applications column just really super empty. I did not fill that in, so I'll apologize. But I do remember seeing those particular.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what
I think it was back in May, as I recall. We had 2 variances.
Yeah, it might have been. I don't remember when. It might
Mhm.
not even been last year. It might have been 2024, but
No, it was 2025, I think, when we did the
Okay.
flag signage and all that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, and the
Okay.
sandwich board out on the road or on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was back in the spring.
And that's what I figured. It was just
Yeah.
under variance. but-
It would have shown up in the agenda as a variance, and that's probably where I took all my summaries from.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? If not,
I'll move to accept the report as is.
thank you very much. Any seconder?
I can't second.
I know, but your hand's up, so.
Sorry. Actually, I did see something. You said there is no changes made to our operating rules and procedures, but in August, I think I noticed we changed the variance or the polling distances for the outside town limits from 1,000 meters to 200 meters.
Yeah, and the second sentence of that paragraph, at our August meeting, though, a change was made to the polling range.
Oh,
It's-
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. No, I'm glad, because that was a big one, so
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't miss it. Yeah. All right, so we have a mover on the report. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Ms. Mercero. Any other questions? All those in favor then of accepting the report for 2025, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All hands up. Thanks so much. That will be adopted. All right, as we move through the agenda, we're moving into the variance applications. We have in front of us PAC 260218, and this is a variance application for 111 Water Street, PID 152055727, regarding some signage requests. And Ms. Charters, did you want to take us through the report?
Sure, one moment, please, and I'll share my screen.
Bet.
It's visible, Judy.
Okay, so the PAC did look at an application at this location in November. And as you said, it's 111 Water Street and is currently used as a St. Andrews Inn and Suites. And the use is a permitted main conditional use within that MU zone and within the HBD. The variance request received from the applicant proposes to install a fascia sign, 36 inches in height, placed over the 3rd floor windows and doors on the water side of the facade. And this would be the exact same sign in relation to height that is on the street side of the inn, and it is not for any illumination, and it's just for a variance in the height of the fascia sign. So fascia signs are permitted in the MU zone, but they're not subject to a maximum number of signs as other zones. So you can have as many signs as long as it's not overly cluttered on the building. And so the section that applies to the MU zone for fascia signs says where a building has no fascia board, a sign not exceeding 60 centimeters, 24 inches in height may be affixed to the building, provided there's sufficient space between the top of the 1st floor moldings or cornice and the bottom of the 2nd floor window moldings. And the sign is defined within the bylaw, and it means any structure, device, light, painting, or other representation of natural object that identifies, advertises, or attracts attention to any object, and which is intended to be seen from off the premises or from the parking lot. So this sign being on the water side of the facade, it is an advertisement seen from off the premises. Notification was sent to property owners within 100 meters. And I do know there was one letter of objection that was received. There may be more, but that's all I'm aware of. So there is policies that do pertain to this application. So in the municipal plan, council shall regulate development within the town plat and historic business district with a secondary municipal plan and zoning bylaw. The secondary municipal plan, signs shall comply with all applicable bylaws. It is proposed that signs located above the glazing base windows shall be contained within the horizontal and vertical rhythms of the facade. And for sign placement, mounted signs should be located on the face of the building, well above the transom and cornice. It's best to locate these in the middle of the facade or above the storefront entry. This is a sign that's being proposed. As you see, it is 36 inches in height, and that is 12 inches more than what is permitted by the bylaw. And this will be the placement of the sign, which is in the middle of the facade, above the third floor windows and doors, and it would be seen from the water's side of the building. PASC is asked to consider a variance in height of 12 inches for a proposed fascia sign that's located on the water side of the facade. The proposed sign is identical in size to the existing fascia sign on the street side of the facade. The design of the building prevents the fascia sign from being mounted above the first floor windows. However, the proposed placement complies with the secondary municipal plan, as the sign will be in the middle of the facade over the third floor windows. And so when we're looking at the bylaw and variances that can be applied, it is where situations are reasonable and desirable for the development land and within the general intent of the bylaw. The general intent of the bylaw is to prevent fascia signs from being overly prominent on the building facade regarding the height and width of the building. And this is to generally reduce advertising clutter and visual domination and to promote a compatible aesthetic pattern with surrounding buildings. A 36-inch tall fascia sign won't appear overly prominent on the building's facade because of the structure's height and number of stories. There won't be any advertising clutter as this is the only side on the water side facade. So it is the opinion of staff that the proposed sign variance is reasonable and desirable for the development of land and within the general intent of the bylaw. The recommendation, staff recommends the Planning Advisory Committee approve the requested variance of 12 inches in height for 111 Water Street, St. Andrews, PID 1520, 5727, to allow for a fascia sign 36 inches in height as a variance is reasonable, desirable within the general intent of the bylaw. And that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Mr. Sawyer, over to you.
I'm just wondering, the screenshot that you shared that was a mock-up of the proposed sign on the building, is that image to scale? I don't see it included in the paper package. It's just contained in the screen that you shared. And what I mean by to scale is that an accurate representation of the size of the sign relative to the building where it's posted in the picture? Yeah, that's the one I'm referring to.
Yes, I would say that it would be relatively the size as it would be. If you look at the front view of the building, it would be roughly the same scale.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes. Judy, is the sign up currently?
Not to my knowledge, no.
On the rear?
And did we not hear this in November?
We did, but it was for an illuminated sign. And so because the illuminated sign, they'd already had one on the front, there was no requirement to have a second illuminated sign. So the variance in for the height of the fascia was not considered.
Okay. And can I ask one more question?
As many as you'd
Thank
like.
you. Do we currently have any businesses with signs on the water side? I guess
That was my question too, to be honest, to bring it up as a concern, because within the written report, you said on the face of the building, but this isn't the face of the building. And so, to be honest, I can't say, can't foresee any, but most of the buildings along the Water Street, the front is retail, a lot of them, the back is
yeah, others,
is residential.
right.
So no need. So that be something that you may want to consider.
Think the yacht club might have a sign on the water side, but it's very small. The Sacy,
Yeah.
it's like very small. It's there.
It's a little bit of an angle, yeah. Yes, yes, you sure can.
Forgive me if I'm missing it, but do we have a definition of facade in terms of if it relates to a specific side of the building, whether it's like a street facing or the frontmost side of the building, in relation to the sign application?
I can check the bylaw for that definition. Facade isn't defined, but fascia sign is. I can, just 1 second, I'm going to check the definitions outside of the sign section.
Yeah, on page 11 of the package, right at the bottom, the definition for fascia sign is there, but not for facade as Mr. Solier was asking. So, yeah.
There is a definition for facade. It's not in the sign section, but it is within the bylaw.
Oh,
And
I'm
it means
sorry.
it does mean, it's not in my report. No, I just looked it up, but it does mean an exterior wall of a building or structure that is exposed to public view or the wall viewed by persons not within the building. So in this case, the water side would be considered a facade as it's an exterior wall.
You know, Chris, the sign is up or not?
I don't think that one is, because they have the sign manufacturer as their agent of it. So they're the ones I've been, and they were waiting to get, the last I heard, about a month ago, they were waiting to get approval before they started the manufacture of it. But I think, well, yeah, to my knowledge, it's not. If you really want to know, I can take a rundown now and have a look. Table it for a few minutes.
I thought it was, that's all. But
So, oh, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. So currently in our zoning bylaw, we don't have anything that speaks to kind of the visual clutter. We have it on the street side, but we don't have it on the water side, correct?
For the MU zone, there is not a cap on how many facade or fascia signs you can have.
But on the number of signs there is.
I have some concerns about that.
But I guess going back to the planners though, and I understand where you're coming from, but if it's not spoken to if it's not inherently not allowed, on something that's, if you know where I'm coming at.
Yeah.
Can PAC deny
Yeah,
it?
we're not.
Yeah, it's really just about with the variance request.
That's right.
And I think, Judy, you should confirm this, but I think a sign would be allowed there. It's just the size or the height of the sign that is the issue.
Right.
That may be something PAC wants to consider in their views on the proposed zoning bylaw, but that will be a different discussion.
That is correct. A 24-inch fascia sign would be allowed there with no PAC consideration.
Yeah.
But they're requesting 50% more of that, correct? An increase of 50% more. Is that,
Yeah, the variance is
right?
50%. Yes, the variance is 50%.
Yes.
Do we have any other questions for the planner? I don't want to rush anyone, but. Is the applicant online by chance? No, thank you, or thank you. All right, well. If there's no more, okay, go ahead.
sorry.
No,
So I always am concerned about this in terms of setting precedent, because that is a significant increase in the size of the sign. And unless we deal with this in the new bylaws, that then sets some precedent, doesn't it?
I mean, really, variances are decided on a case by case basis. There would be no, obviously, it's something that is maybe considered in a decision, but there would be no legal requirement to make the same
Okay.
decision again, because you're dealing with a different property, different situation.
And a much different scale. I mean, the building's quite big as opposed if there's a 1-story building and a 50% variance versus a 2.5-story building.
is there anyone online that wanted to make a presentation to this file?
No attendee is responding.
All
to me,
right,
So
all right, well, with no public feedback, it comes back to the committee for further discussion and a motion. And I don't, as I say, I don't want to rush. Let's discuss it as much as you need to.
I guess to start the discussion, I will put forward the recommendation from staff. Staff recommends that the Planning Advisory Committee approve the requested variance of 12 inches in height for 111 Water Street, St. Andrews, PID 152-05727, to allow for a fascia sign 36 inches in height, as the variance is reasonable or desirable and within the general intent of the bylaw.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Mr. Kerr. Excellent. All right. Any discussion?
I'll share, I guess, just briefly thoughts. I put the motion forward because I think it is in alignment with current policy broadly, and I think the variance is supportable for the reasons outlined in the staff report, really based on the scale of the building. I recognize there might be concerns about the practicality of it, but I think that is a matter for changing policy going forward, in my opinion. So that's really, I think, why I put this forward. And I'll respect the will of the committee, whatever may come from it.
Anyone else?
Just a bit of a concern or an opinion. This is sort of one that I don't know if anyone would have anticipated before, and not that it matters, but I have a hard time understanding the rationale or the validity of having a sign on the water side of your building. And my only fear is that if now you work your way down Water Street and all the other merchants decide that they're gonna, put signs on the water side of their buildings, I think it's going to be a detractor to the town. And so whether that can be addressed in the new bylaws, I don't know, but I mean, really, if you're out in a boat in the harbor, in the bay, you'd see it, but otherwise, I don't see how it's gonna bring in more foot traffic or more customer base. The only thing I see is it's kind of going to be an eyesore, and that's my opinion. But back to Rebecca's point, the variance has been applied for under the current zoning bylaws. But I just think going forward that maybe we need to look at something. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? There's no further discussion. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand. I'm
That's okay.
sorry.
So I recognize the comments of both my previous two PAC colleagues. And I do recognize the size of the building. However, that's a significant increase in the size of a sign. And am I able to ask one more question? Judy, what is the current size of the sign on the front of the building?
36 inches.
It
Yes,
is,
it's 36
so it's
inches.
the same size on the front and the back end.
It is, yes.
So they're requesting the same size,
Same size, yes, not illuminated like the front
right?
basically or facade is. And just to address the last comment, the one good thing about in the bylaw right now, commercial uses are only allowed one fascia, so they wouldn't be able to put a sign on the water side of the facade. It's just the MU zone that doesn't have that cap of how many fascia signs you can have. So getting out of the MU zone, when you go into the central commercial zone, only one fascia sign would be permitted.
And so those that have one on the front would not be permitted to have one on the water side.
Only by variance, not
Only by
not
variance.
as a permitted use. Just the MU zone is allowed to have more than one fascia sign.
Okay. That's a good point. Thank you. Helpful.
So what I will say is based on the size of that sign, I am inclined to not vote in favor of this application because it is a large sign on the water side. And to Mr. Tanner's point, it's I don't see how it will increase the foot traffic or the advertisement possibilities for the facility on that water side, which is very limited in terms of visibility. So.
And I understand that we do have to remember that we are just dealing with the size of the sign.
I appreciate that.
Not whether or not it should exist,
I
unfortunately.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
a sign in with that kind of an increase, I'm not prepared to support.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else have some commentary? Before I call the question. So go, yes.
I think this was asked once, but do we have Any idea why the owner wants to put this on the back of the building? Is there any, what, we know what his thought process is in putting it up? Or
I
no?
can check the application. Just one moment. I'll see if there was a rationale.
And from my side, when I look at that size of the building, it is one of the bigger buildings on Water Street, and it is a big sign. And when we look at that picture that Judy showed, I don't think that looked too far. I don't think that looked out of place so much for that size of sign with that size of the building. And we did decline it once for just it being illuminated. But I think knowing that anybody else that wants to put a sign up facing the water that's bigger than 24 inches or 25 inches, will have to get a variance. And we will have to review this again. I don't know. I think I'm okay with it. But I understand everybody else's views, but
Any future applications would be a variance to the number of signs, not necessarily the size. The size could also, but
right.
if they already have one fascia sign, they would need a variance to get the second.
Yeah.
So not just about the size. All right.
Anyway, but I take it, Judy, you didn't find anything?
The application just said to match the same size as the street side
Okay.
signage.
All right, so we have a motion to accept the requested variance, approve the requested variance rather, based on staff report and recommendations. We have a seconded. All those in favor of approving this variance, please signify by saying aye. And all opposed. That's 3 opposed, 2 for, so this application for this variance is not approved. Is that how I say that? All right, so next agenda item under variances again, another signage application, PAC 2602-16. This is a variance application at 139 Water Street, Sunbury Shores, actually PID 013194117. They're actually looking also for some variances to some signage that they're looking at. So I think once again, Ms. Charters, or no, Xander, you.
I need to figure out how to share the right screen. Yeah, actually, okay. Turn this on. Okay. So this is another sign variance, also on Water Street, but would be relating to the actual street. It's for the applicant is Sunbury Shores Art and Nature Center. They're located at 139 Water Street. I don't remember what that PID number is, but I'm assuming everybody is fairly familiar with the building and the nonprofit that runs it. Rather than use a bunch of words to explain what these signs look like, I think it's kind of easy to start with some pictures. So the sign on the bottom that says Atomic Metal Sandwich Board sign, that is a sandwich board sign that meets the definition of a sandwich board sign in the zoning bylaw. The sign on top, which is the sign that Sunbury Shores would like to put out. And for some time, I think they were, and then they realized they needed a permit, and we started the process. They were donated this sign which is definitionally not a sandwich board sign because of the way sandwich board sign is defined. It's constructed of 2 boards connecting at one end. There is also a size limit to 1 square meter, and the WinPro, I'm just going to call it the WinPro movable sign, has a sign face of 1.5 square meters. That's both sides of the sign. So 0.75 square meters per side. And hopefully you can get a sense of how big it actually is by seeing it there. It was donated to Sunbury Shores, which is a nonprofit. It seems like a fairly similar concept to a sandwich board sign. And that's kind of when I was trying to think, how does this fit? What is this? The closest to it is a sandwich board sign, and possibly with a slightly less prescriptive definition, it wouldn't need a variance, but it's kind of clear. In this particular business's case, I think they would like to use this particular type of sign, because it was donated, but also it's easy to weigh down. The applicant did tell me they had a metal sign and it kept blowing away. I think what's really desirable about this type of sign for the business is that they can switch posters in and out of the sign very easily, and they're protected by clear plastic sheet. So they're not going to get rained on. They're not going to get blown around. You can kind of imagine if you just had paper tacked to an actual sandwich board sign, what would happen over time. So it seems like it makes a lot of sense for this type of business. They have the ability to print these posters. So there is a policy in the municipal plan, which seems very relevant to this. Council shall strive to ensure that cultural events are adequately promoted and developed, especially in the off-peak shoulder and winter tourism season. So this variance would allow a nonprofit that operates and hosts events year-round to more easily promote cultural events. And as I mentioned before, it seems like this type of sign is really ideal for this, not exactly a business, but a cultural space with changing events, changing gallery openings, things like that. There were no we did the mail out. There were no comments heard. So my recommendation is to approve the sign variance to allow an outdoor sidewalk advertising sign that is not a sandwich board and has a sign face greater than 1 square meter. But there are some terms and conditions. The sign should not be placed so it blocks pedestrian traffic. The sign is only in use outside while the business is open, which is part of the definition of sandwich board sign. It's taken on and off site daily. And that the sign is only used to advertise upcoming or in progress events so that it doesn't become kind of you go to the store and everything on the poster board is really out of date. And that's ideally it's being used to advertise upcoming and current events. So if any of these weren't followed, we could follow up and make sure that either the signs are moved or the condition is met. So I did reach out to the applicant and let them know that I was going to be recommending these conditions, and they had no concerns with them. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
I don't really have any questions. My view is I love it. I think it's great compared to a sandwich board sign and supports the business. That's my thought.
Any other questions for the planner? And is the applicant online? No, and no other attendees that want to add to this file?
Nobody's raising their hand up.
Thank you very much. All right, so over to us for motion and further discussion. Anybody? Ms. Harland?
I'll make a motion that the Planning Advisory Committee of the Town of St. Andrews makes the following. I didn't read this. That makes the following recommendations regarding draft. Oh, shoot, I'm in the wrong one. I'm thinking this doesn't fit. Excuse me for a minute. Okay, let's try this.
Let's.
Round two, that the Planning Advisory Committee of the Town of St. Andrews approve a variance to allow an outdoor sidewalk advertising sign that is not a sandwich board and has a sign face greater than 1 square meter, 1.5 square meters, subject to the following terms and conditions. That the sign is not placed so as to block pedestrian traffic, that the sign is only in use and outside while the business is open, that the sign is only used to advertise upcoming or in progress events, i.e. posters, are not displayed for events that are no longer current. I so move.
Thanks for that motion. Is there a seconder on that? Mr. Tanner, thanks so much. Any further discussion on the application? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the variances with these conditions as moved, please signify by saying aye. And any opposed? All right, one opposed. Thank you. Okay. All right, so this is the big application for tonight. This is PAC 260219. We are being asked to provide our views to town council regarding the draft zoning bylaw Z2501. And I will assume over to you, Mr. Gopin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am not going to present on the entire bylaw because there are, it would take about an hour, and there are videos of it online, which hopefully you have watched. Hopefully, read through it. But I think for efficiency's sake, does not make sense to go through it. I will be happy to answer any questions you have on it. And you should give all the views that you wish to give. There are some specific areas that staff feels council does need particular advice on. And at this time, PAC is the group to give council that advice. And if council accepts that advice, then we don't have to go back to PAC. If council makes changes, we don't have to, it's the proper way to go through the process. So I'll present specifically on those, but then happy to answer any questions, talk about the bylaw, any part of it. I just have given enough presentations on it and they're out there, so I don't think we need to do that. So, maybe it makes sense for me to answer questions before I talk about the specifics, because it's possible that the specifics might need answers to questions if there are questions at this time.
Okay.
Or if you read the report and you want to talk about those specific things, I can do the presentation.
Ms. Mercer.
Thank you. I have a number of questions.
Okay.
So I'll share page numbers as I go through them. Page 21, under development permits, it talks about exceptions to development permits, including tree cutting scenarios and conservation areas, which flagged for me. Here, I'll point everyone to it. So 3.7, so it's section 3.7.2 E. And this clause just begged the question for me of how, I guess, I know there's a general interest in regulating and protecting trees broadly in the community. And so how is that enabled or not through the zoning bylaw? And I guess I was a little bit confused about that clause.
That is a good question. Because the C1 and C2 zones have specific requirements for preserving areas for the growth and maintenance of trees. 50%, I think it's 25% and 75%.
Okay.
In most other zones, there would not be any regulation of clearing of trees. I think the intent would be that in those zones, in the C1 and C2 zones, a development permit is required for the clearing of trees. And it might actually be a comma issue in that particular policy. But that should be something that council clarifies. Because I believe the intent is that in those zones, if you are clearing trees, that healthy trees are not just doing, basic maintenance, pruning, clearing deadfall, things like that. Because it is regulated, it is something that you do need a development permit for. So we make sure that the amount of area being cleared doesn't exceed what is allowed in the zone.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. I guess so. I'm wondering if we are not regulating tree cutting in other zones through the zoning bylaw, are there other tools that we can use later to do so in the available?
There certainly could be. I think there is a municipality in New Brunswick that has it might actually be Dieppe, where I'm going to be Thursday and Friday. They might have a tree clearing bylaw specifically for under the Local Governance Act. So you have to get not a development permit, but an actual arbory permit, something like that. So that is an option that could be available to council.
Okay. Thank you. I just didn't want to, I wanted to make sure we weren't missing that single opportunity through the zoning bylaw. Page 31 and bare land condominiums. Actually, I think I must have that. Oh, yeah, standards for mini home parks or bare land condominiums. I guess I'm curious about this from a couple of different angles. It looks like what is proposed is to permit bare land condominiums in the lower intensity zones. And we're proposing to do that. And it looks like it would need to be a sort of 1 unit per 1 acre scenario for the developments. And we're also at the same time in those same zones, increasing the minimum lot size to 5 acres in at least one of those zones. So I guess I'm just wondering, is there a risk of, well, we're on one hand trying to reduce sprawl through the lot sizes, but we're enabling it through in the same zones through this new form of land development?
So I think these would all be acre lot zones. The R3 zone is the 5 acre.
Okay. Yeah.
So the idea behind the bare land condo in this scenario, in other places it's called a cluster development.
Mm-hmm.
It's allowing the same number of dwelling units across the same number of acres, but they have to be clustered, or they don't have to be, but the benefit is that they can be clustered closer together than they would be if each of them had their own acre.
Right.
So it doesn't enable any more units than you would have through a single lot subdivision, but it enables those number of units to be, I would say, developed a little bit more efficiently, potentially all closer to the road.
Okay. That's helpful. I didn't catch that nuance that the R3 zone isn't captured here. I'm also wondering, have we enabled through this zoning bylaw? I think when I look at the definition of bare land condominiums, is it meant to include like single building structures, like multi-unit dwellings that are provided through ownership rather than through rental?
That's definitely the intent. One lot constructed land located or constructed after purchase. I just want to look at like the U1 zone. Is that the only? Can dwellings be a bare land condominium? That's the question. I think it would help to clarify that in the definition of dwelling.
Mr. Goopin, I guess part of it too, it says, under the definitions, it says separate units of land, but a multi-purpose building or a multi-residential building that have separate condos within it wouldn't have separate parcels of land, correct?
Generally, one lot consisting of separate units of land on which buildings may be located or constructed after purchase. I think it would be helpful to clarify. I don't think it's entirely clear, and I think one reading of this is that any type of condominium is only allowed as a bare land condominium cluster development, which isn't the intent.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hoping that through the zoning bylaw, we enable multi-unit condominiums for ownership. And that's why I'm asking, because this section seems to apply only to the lower intensity zones, whereas I would think in our downtown areas, that's where we would, the higher intensity zones is where we'd want to see multi-unit buildings for condominiums.
Yeah, and I think certainly when you look at it with the mini home part, that is more of a rural typology, and the cluster development is certainly a more rural typology. So I think I agree that the bylaw should clearly not distinguish between tenancies or ownerships in the urban areas, I think. So that's
That'd be
good.
great. Thank you.
Helpful.
And then page 35, I guess I'm noticing that rooming houses and residential care facilities, when you look at the zones where they're proposed to be permitted, they're not very widespread, in my view, in sort of the peninsula area of the town. And I guess I would like them to be. And I'm wondering, increasingly I find like the distinction between a rooming house and just a house that a bunch of people who know each other rent is not very clear. And so I'm wondering, do we need a rooming house definition? And is that a common practice still?
We have one actually right now,
Mhm.
just up the street here. The old vet building, it's just a rooming house. It's got 6 or 8 bedrooms or something. So
Right.
we do have that type of,
Yeah, but what is the actual distinction between that and just a big house rented by people? Why do we need a distinction?
So the definition of rooming house, it's a dwelling with single room occupancy, synonymous with boarding house, where individual sleeping quarters are provided to more than 3 persons for compensation. So it's the 3-person threshold, and I think it's fair to say that's too low. I guess there's differing opinions on whether it's better to clearly define what a rooming house is versus it better to there certainly is an important principle in planning that you don't people zone. So you don't the concept of a family is not necessarily people related to each other. It's people sharing a space, and rooming houses can fall under that for sure. I think there's probably a scale at which there needs to be a distinction.
Okay, that's enough of a response. Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm just looking at this with the lens of the more flexible the housing supply, the better, especially in rental scenarios. So if we have rooming houses that are defined, I think it would be nice to see them permitted in more zones than is proposed right now. So that's just where I'm coming to that question from. And then I have a question that's about the conservation zones, but it also, I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because it's a similar question that I have for the natural hazard overlay properties. So in the conservation zones, and when I look at those, I think a lot of the properties around Shamcook Lake in particular, am I interpreting what's proposed correctly in understanding that if someone's in the C1 zone and they say they have currently a vacant lot, they would not be permitted to build, say, a camp or a house on that lot?
have you got a page number you're looking at, Ms. Mercer?
Well, it's a combination of the zoning map on page 68.
Okay.
And the C1 description on page 40.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is basically without some kind of variance or rezoning, more likely a rezoning for the C1 zone, that would be correct.
Okay. I'm just thinking about it from a lens of how that might go over with the public. Do we think that would impact a lot of lots, or are they pretty much built out?
So the lots around the lakes themselves, the C1 zone there aligns with zone B of the protected watershed designation, which is Department of Environment regulation under the Clean Water Act. And that zone does not allow new buildings, basically. So that aligns. Now, there are some other areas. There are water courses, around water courses, things like that. I don't think there are any other properties where the whole amount of property would be covered by that zone. There has been some questions from the public about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's news to me that that's not actually a change. And that's, I think, helpful from the municipality's perspective.
Sorry, can I just ask Sandra a question related to
Yeah,
that so I don't
absolutely.
lose it? We have had a variance application, though. I believe this PAC heard a variance application in that area where, because the issue is about the septic, is it not?
There certainly can be an issue.
Right. And I thought we had an application where there was a building lot, but they put the septic was far enough away. They had enough land that the septic was far enough away, so it was outside of the
Right.
conservation area. Is anybody else memory jogged by this?
I don't remember the exact property, but I do remember.
Yeah. So I think that that's an important, I think that's important for the public to know that it doesn't mean absolutely no, but there could be some possibilities, right? If you had enough land and could put the septic away from the conservation area.
You can apply for exemptions under the designation. My understanding is they're very rarely granted. If they were granted by that department, I think that would be very relevant for any rezonings or variances. But yeah, I mean, typically there's a few of those really, really small lots right around Shamcook that are completely within this zone. But I think most of those are built on already. And again, they're very, very limited by a provincial act.
Sorry, Rebecca.
No problem. Good question. Two questions about the natural hazard overlay zones on page 64 and 65. So I'm wondering, so looking at page 64 specifically and sort of the limitations on developing in that zone. If there's a scenario where, say, an existing building burns down or goes into disrepair and has to be taken down, what development situation happens there? Are they allowed to build on the previous footprint?
So you can certainly do alterations and repairs to existing buildings and structures if they're not increasing the gross floor area. And typically that will include reconstruction.
Okay. Yeah, I was assuming that the sort of regular grandfathering provisions would still apply in that situation. Okay.
It would not, I don't think it would permit, it doesn't, there are some that allow the actual replacement. So you could say, oh, I'm going to demolish this and rebuild a new one just because I feel like it.
Right.
I think we really would have to be we'd have to say this is repair because there's significant damage.
Right.
And that could include aspects of demolition for sure.
Thank you. Page 65, the very last sentence, it talks about the need to basically have engineered plans, and it says that it must remove a bunch of building components to at least 60 centimeters above projected sea level rise. Oh, and it's defined. My question was which projected sea level rise, by when and by whom?
It's the province, it's their mapping and data on where sea level rise will be, what the elevation is. It's the pretty sure I think that's high tide 2100.
Okay. Yeah, I neglected to notice it was a definition. Yeah.
I do know a lot of places are like provincially, and I know that federal flood regulation or insurance is usually dealing with 1 in 200 year storms now. Probably shouldn't be using that type of language. I guess you would say a 0.5% probability storm, whereas the 1 in 100 is a 1%. We don't have that provincial data. Province hasn't done that. Hopefully they're working on it.
Okay, that sounds great. I guess since I have the floor, I'll just share my one. It's more of a comment than a question. When I look at the proposed industrial zoning, it's very limited to what is currently very obviously industrial land. Actually, here's a question. When the rural areas became part of the municipality, like, are there currently industrial uses in those areas that are proposed to be rezoned to other uses in this?
So in the rural areas, the only zones that allowed heavy industrial uses were basically the Bayside Port. And there's a small expansion of that, and there's another area close to the highway, which I guess is not currently zoned for heavy industry, where there's a blueberry plant. I think there's some pulp storage, cold storage. There's warehousing and things like that. So those were included.
Yeah.
The rural zones still do allow for light industrial uses, which are not super well defined and have led to significant appeals that this PAC has dealt with. So there was an intent with this zoning bylaw to really try and contain most industrial uses, even light ones, even kind of warehousing, large warehousing and things like that. Try and limit those to existing industrial zones. There is the potential for rezonings, and there would be legally non-conforming uses, but there is a bit of history in the area around that specific issue.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that. That is it for my questions.
Notes than that.
Those are the priority ones.
All right. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll be coming back just to make sure I caught everything at the end. Mr. Tanner, did you have some? No? Good.
I have, I should know this like the back of my hand, but I don't. So I have two issues. One is, could you just help me understand the difference between the current zoning bylaws with respect to ancillary buildings? And the new bylaw, the new proposed bylaws?
By ancillary, do you mean accessory?
Accessory, thank you.
And all like accessory buildings, generally, or specifically accessory dwelling units, or
Accessory dwelling units.
Okay. So in the current, I'll start with the former municipal boundaries. So in Z 2201, accessory dwelling units are allowed. There was an amendment, I can't remember which one, but it expanded the floor area up to a potential of 902 square feet. There's still a lot coverage requirement of 10%. I think it's 10%. So you could do that in the service residential zone. You could do that in the state residential zone. If you were in the MR1 town plat kind of multiple residential zone and you had not an apartment building, then you could have an accessory dwelling unit. So it was, I'd say Z22 was pretty flexible with accessory dwelling units. And in terms of adding gentle density, they are a really, really good tool and one that people actually use.
Mm-hmm.
This is really true across the board. We don't tend to see very small apartments being developed. It's not a particularly good business plan. So the accessory dwelling unit has actually been, I don't think there's been a ton of them developed. I think maybe 3 or 4 in my time here since they were allowed. But they do get built. So in the rural zones, you could have garden suites, but they couldn't be put on foundations. They might have at one point said it could only be for immediate family members, but that is something I mentioned before, the people zoning. We really just we kind of have to ignore those because we can't ask people if they're related. So in the proposed zones, it's I think it's very, very similar. I'm going to check the size because I think there might even it's possible the size is actually decreased from that.
That's page 27, correct?
Oh. You do know it.
I just looked.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're limited to 10% of the total lot size. And they're in a main building. They can't exceed 75% of the ground floor. So I'd say there's really very little changes, and there's still lot coverage standards. So you wouldn't have, except in the U3 zone, that kind of the highest intensity. But that's a zone where you can have apartment buildings anyways. There would be no more than, I think it's 45% of the lot could be developed with buildings. So there's still a requirement to have open spaces on the lot.
Right, so it says where permitted, no more than one accessory dwelling unit may be placed or erected on a lot, and no building structure may be altered. So, and I know that we've heard a variance not too long ago where there was more than one dwelling, or more than one accessory building. One was a dwelling and one was to be a garden shed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still the ability to make those variance applications. But those would be, they would all come to PAC, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so my second question is with respect to the historic business district. And I meant to look this up before I came to this meeting and I didn't, so I'll just ask you the question. In the zoning bylaw, it's written that any proposed buildings within the historic business district must come to council for approval, but that's just within the historic business district. It is not within the town plat.
No, just within the historic business district.
Okay. And that's to protect the business district,
Yeah.
the look and feel,
Yeah.
and ensure that we maintain the integrity of the that district.
Yeah.
Okay. And we made a change, or we had a discussion at a council meeting around the densification. So originally, and maybe the first version, it was within the plat. There were many more opportunities for densification within the town plat.
Mhm.
And then I think we agreed as a council that we would reduce that to the areas on the outskirts. So maybe down Harriet.
Yeah, actually, this is one of the specific things I was hoping to get PAC's input on. So there are changes since the draft that council saw and asked for those changes too. I kind of want PAC's opinion on, have we done it the right way?
Okay. All right. So I'll just save that. I'll park that for a minute. And my last question is around, I know we've talked about it a number of times, but the R3
rural resource.
Yep. So it goes along a little bit with what Ms. Mercero was talking about, which was sort of kind of the appetite of St. Andrews, of the newly amalgamated St. Andrews. That zone, in my opinion, is kind of hit in some of the hardest ways, because it says that you can't subdivide your land except for 5 acres. And that is huge in terms of saying to people who have owned land for a very long time and may have had a plan or whatever, but now we're saying we're going to put significant restrictions on how you can subdivide this land. And I do understand that it relates to the statements of public interest. And I understand that that's a direction of government, of provincial government, and the Department of Agriculture, thank you. But do we have any recourse in pushing that envelope a little bit as a municipality?
So I guess I'll explain how this zone came to be, the thinking behind it, maybe some of the nuances of it. So it is absolutely true that will be more challenges in subdividing. Doesn't mean that subdivisions can't happen. There can be variances for that size. The reasoning behind 5 acres is that if you're going to be engaging in these types of activities, they need a certain amount of space around them.
Right.
And if you end up having smaller acre residential subdivisions coming into these areas, they will lose their viability for this potential use. And I do understand the concerns around, you know, how people have planned and investments and things like that. Those are not matters that the statements of public interest take into consideration. They're not matters that the Community Planning Act takes into consideration, except to say, if a council makes changes and it affects you in this way, council has no legal obligation. So it actually, the Community Planning Act clearly states that. I think the flexibility that is here is, and I think maybe where the interpretation and nuance comes in is the ability to build in these areas, build a home in these areas. Because it may look like, well, you can't have a main residential dwelling, you can't have a dwelling in these zones. We have zones like this in other parts of the region, and there's zones like this in other parts of the province. And 9 times out of 10, when people have called me about them and they explain what they want to do with the land, unless it's subdivided under 5 acres, they're like, I want to build a house, and then I'm gonna, you know, have a garden. I'm gonna chop down some firewood. I'm gonna leave, you know, this huge portion undeveloped. Those are actually main uses that are allowed in this zone. So again, I don't want to diminish the ability to subdivide, but you can kind of consider it a bit of a homestead zone. And I think that is another reason why it's important to have a zone like this in the rural areas, because it seems like it is more important to separate some of these uses out, whereas in the current, the rural zones in Champion and Bayside, you can pretty much do these uses, except maybe the resource excavation. You can do them anywhere, and you can have residential uses anywhere, and there are land use conflicts that exist because of that. So that's some of the thinking behind it. There may be cases where, and you know, we've talked to landowners who have land in this zone, and they've explained, you know, these are their concerns. Here's, you know, what their future plans are. And there are some cases where we're able to say, you know, in the municipal plan, based on all these factors, we do have to identify this as a prime agricultural area, like a cleared field and where there's prime soil. And while there are, and you know, we have found some of these, there are, you know, cleared fields these are lawns, these are, they're cleared for other reasons that are not agriculture. But there are a lot of fields that are still being hayed in this area, and that is a really important part of the agricultural process, because animals rely on the hay, and that hay has to come from somewhere, and the closer it can come to the animals that it needs to get to, that's how you can actually start having you know, an actual agricultural sector develop. Local food systems grow. So I guess that is the thinking behind this zone. And yes, the Department of Agriculture is extremely concerned about the loss of viable agricultural land in the province. I actually will be again, at this meeting I'm going to tomorrow, they will be presenting to us, to a bunch of planners, and I'm really interested to hear from them. And I'll bring this up. I'll say, you need to know what happens when we try to implement what you're telling us to do, which we understand. We, planners, I think generally, we see local food systems as very important for lots of reasons. But there often can be a disconnect between provincial policies and what happens on the ground. And it's really in our worlds that we see those impacts. So I think it's a really important thing to bring back to the Department of Agriculture. There are ways they can refine, give us advice to, do these things to build thriving local food systems that are really supported by the public. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I guess that's the issue I have, is that, I mean, it's just like we still deal with, as we heard in the meeting last week, we still deal with the ire of some people around the decision for amalgamation. And so now we're making decisions for our zoning bylaws based on statements of public interest and guide or direction, not guidance, but direction from the Department of Agriculture. And it has huge impact. And we at the municipal level, we're the ones that face that. And if I were, and I can only imagine how I would feel if I were if my land was in one of those zones, that I was now going to be told, it's not even like we're expropriating it and paying you for it. We're just telling you what you can and cannot do. And 5 acres seems to be that's a huge chunk. And I do understand the buffering or the, not wanting to, or wanting to mitigate the lands being used and it not being compatible. I certainly get that, but 5 acres is a huge swath of land. So I still struggle with this one, significantly struggle with it. And I will be very interested in knowing what you're able to bring back. Thank you.
I will say one other thing on the 5 acres. And one response from I'm about to say will be, well, we don't have the same type of agriculture that they have in Quebec or they have in Manitoba. I think Quebec's a better example because they are doing smaller things. It's when you get into wheat and grains, you need huge amounts of land. But even in Quebec, 5 acres is not, that's a very small agricultural area. So if you were, I don't know off the top of my head what the limits for subdividing agricultural land is in Quebec in terms of pure acreage, but I do know that if you want to subdivide farmland, you have to bring a plan to the Department of Agriculture and they will approve it or not. So and I think there's a bit of a chicken and egg. And you could say, well, they do that because they have such great soil and such a great local food system. But if they didn't have those protections, would they still have that? And would they have gotten there if they hadn't thought about agriculture and the importance of local food economies? It's something that's very serious in Quebec. And I'm not saying that's what we should do here. But I think it's a good example to consider of what happens if you have really, really strong agricultural protections. And it's not the only thing. I think there needs to be proactive work from the Department of Agriculture on how do we not only protect land, but encourage people to use it and actually be involved in developing agriculture.
Hearing everything you're saying, very good about agree with, but last summer, out of the Atlantic Salmon Federation. No, that he had some confidence when his property was agricultural. He was exactly talking about doing what that subdivided. He said the soil basically said don't get erosion stones. So I can see not subdividing farmland feed right now for growing hay or vegetable or big bed, but dividing that up. But it was that gentleman. He kept basically not doing what you call fine agriculture real estate, but he seems to be this.
Yeah, and that's something I think the department is aware of, that they need to get better at identifying what these areas are. It isn't just about agriculture. There's forestry, there's resource excavation as well. So there are statements of public interest on not just agriculture, but natural resource development. And so there may be other reasons why it's in that zone. And probably it's just the distance it is from other things in that case. But I think at least from the agricultural point of view, it is helpful to have more nuance and more data. And I think that's something I'll bring up again.
Mr. Spear.
Yeah, I just want to follow up, Xander. I guess even I've gone with this through a lot of times, but maybe getting back to how you collected your data. So the identification of these lands, I'm assuming was done by another department, like there's overlays for, okay. So I'll go to that. But once it came to the restrictions on land sizes and stuff, was that kind of dictated, or is that left for council to kind of figure that out on their own?
The Department of Agriculture, I mean, really for these types of developments, they say, or any of these natural resource-based activities say you should not allow subdivisions less than 5 acres.
Based on their regulations or the agricultural legislation, or?
Based on their interpretations of the statements of public interest.
But the statements of public interest are fairly high end, correct? They don't get too deep into.
No.
I'm just trying to make sure council understands and PAC the flexibility that they have. So they've identified these things, but if they have more flexibility than they think in saying, well, it's an area, but we'll allow it to be 3 acres, 2 acres, whatever the magic number is, a half an acre. I don't.
There may be.
I just want to make sure that everyone understands what the rules are, I guess, essentially, that, that if it's being broadly interpreted across the province about what the standards are, the mapping, right? I agree. That's like the overlay zone for the sea level rise. That's something provided higher above. But if the way that you maintain this area is open to council's or interpretation, we should be allowed to know that, so we can play with it accordingly, because I think council's kind of feeling that that stuff is fairly laid out, and if it's not, it'd be good to know that.
So it's not, there is nothing in a regulation that says you have to have a zone for these type of uses that does not allow subdivision under 5 acres. It's not that explicit. What will happen is, actually I've already sent it, but the zoning bylaw, just like the municipal plan, will get sent to all the departments. They'll give us their feedback. The Department of Agriculture, not on this plan, but on other plans I've worked with, they have told me explicitly, we do not think this meets the statements of public interest. Now, what that actually means, I don't know. There may be an opportunity where we have, in the conservation zones, where they're, kind of based on these natural features, there is a policy where if you get a delineation and the feature isn't where the province says it is, the zone boundary automatically changes. I think if PAC wanted to advise council to consider something like that, that to me feels like probably a way to meet the statement of public interest and have Department of Agriculture agree that we're meeting the statements, without having, that to me seems like a rational way to deal with it.
Sorry, can you say that again?
So, I haven't honestly completely thought it through. But there is a policy, there's one thing in the zoning bylaw which says, if you have a C1 zone on your property that's based on a wetland that's provincially mapped, and a professional delineator, someone with that professional expertise comes and delineates it, or the Department of Environment will sometimes come and do it. Has actually happened. Somebody emailed me a few days ago and said, hey, we actually have this wetland that we got redelineated. Can you check on it? And I said, oh, yeah, you did. Well, that should be changed. I wonder if there's a similar idea for this zone where there's a way to tie it more to the actual viability of the land. So that's something I think we could look at. And
I think it's just fair, though. What I'm looking for is you're given your professional opinion, which is great, but council wants to see if they have any flexibility, because I think some of them feeling like it's being, that there's regulations that are putting this in tight on these conservation areas specifically. And if there's not, they have to know that really how much flexibility, if any, maybe there's none. I don't want to give any hope, but it'd be nice to know exactly what that is, if there is any.
Yeah. So like I said, there's the regulation and the SPIs, is to your point, Mr. Spear, it is high level, it's vague. It says you have to have areas in the municipality to promote agriculture and resource-based activities. Not having a large enough land base in that zone and allowing I can't give you a number, but I would say 1 acre by 1 acre lot subdivisions, based on that department's interpretation of the statements, and I would say based on mine, that is not promoting it in the municipality. So that's what we have to do. And the department's interpretation and possibly their internal policy, I'm going to try and find out more about this, is that 5 acres is that number.
Yes.
So just along this line of thinking, and I know I think you and I had a conversation around this before. But so the Department of Agriculture, the provincial government is pushing down some regulations to us as a municipality.
Mhm.
The Department of Heritage and Culture.
Tourism, heritage, and culture.
Tourism, Heritage and Culture. They also had regulations, right? That had an impact on the heritage designated homes within, well, within St. Andrews. So what I'm trying to get at, and I think we're running out of time, but people were able to opt out.
Those were your own municipal regulations.
So we allowed people to opt out.
Yeah.
So we said, even though the province says this is a designated home.
No, those were homes that the municipality, so they were
Well-
local historic places, not provincial historic places.
So are you aware of any scenarios where the province has allowed people to opt out of provincially regulated designations?
The statements of public interest are really new in the province.
And they are fairly high level.
Yeah.
And what they say is, a municipality will have areas of whatever.
Yeah.
Protected areas of resource.
Yeah.
Development or whatever. It's pretty vague.
It is.
So I just wonder, because there will be people who will absolutely adopt it, and there will be people who will say that's not what our intention is. And just like, I know it's okay, I see that it's different, it's a bit apples and oranges with the heritage, but we gave people a time frame and said, if you want to opt out, you can opt out. And I realize it was municipal regulations now, based on what you're saying, and these are provincial regulations, but we are making a significant change to people's really, in my opinion, their identity in terms of where they've chosen to invest, buy land, have it handed down from family member to family member, whatever. I really think people should have an option to opt out if that's a possibility. Or be bought out. Yeah.
I do know that one thing the province has talked about, and I think it would be a great idea, is either creating a farmland trust or having agricultural land be something that can be put into the nature trust, so that you can essentially donate those lands, have them not be a burden on your taxes. I think that would really help this process. Unfortunately, that's not an option right now. I will definitely bring this up. The meeting I'm going to, because Alex is not here, is the planning directors across the province. We have a roundtable. So, and again, one of the people presenting at this is the guy at the Department of Agriculture who we email about these things. So I think it'll be a very interesting discussion, and I can see how other planners across the province are interpreting this and ask some of these questions explicitly.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll zip it. Thank you.
Mr. Solier, anything from you?
Yes, I suppose I have a couple questions before I offer my my comments or my input, and I'll just reference something I wrote here. Specifically referring to the rural resource zones. What is the definition of resource excavation use?
So resource excavation use is, I'll read the definition, but then there's actually a lot of standards. Resource excavation use includes quarries, includes mines, things where you're taking stuff out of the ground. Means the use of land for the excavation of sand, gravel, clay, shale, limestone, or other mineral deposit for development or for the sale or other commercial use of the material excavated, but does not include processing or refinement of materials or an extractive industrial use. I will read the definition of extractive industrial use. So this is not a resource excavation use. So that's actually, sorry, extractive industrial use is mining. Mining as defined under the Mining Act, other than a resource excavation use, includes the refinement or processing of minerals, ores, sand, gravel, stone, or other aggregate resources, and includes tailing ponds, rock crushing plants, asphalt plants, or concrete plants. So the extractive industrial uses are the most intensive and would not be allowed in that zone. Things like quarries, where you're just taking stuff out of the ground without any processing, anything like that. They do have additional standards. Section 4.13 applies to all resource uses, deals with separation distances. And these are pretty much exactly the conditions to operate that you have to get from the Department of Natural Resources to do these things. Section 4.14 is specific standards for gravel pits. And then section 4.15 is specifically for quarries, which would be considered a resource excavation use, or mines, which would be the extractive industrial use. And those are all, they all have other provincial regulations that they have to apply with in permitting processes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. The other question I had relates to the overlay map on page 68, again, relating to the rural resource zones. And like, I'm noticing that there are a lot of large parcels already in this area. And a lot of these parcels are bisected by two zones. Now, this is a large document, so again, forgive me if I'm missing it, but what is a landowner to do when their parcel is bisected by these zones? Because obviously this map is at, you know, a greatly small scale. Is there a more detailed overlay map that would show, you know, precise delineations, or are they allowed to use the either use in general on that property? Or
so I should have a written response for this one. And I will say, so having multiple zones on one property is not an entirely new concept in the rural areas. The Shamcook watershed zone essentially was the C2 zone. And then you would have a rural zone on other parts of that property. And that's defined by, you know, in case of a watershed, it's the high point of that area and everything else is flowing into the water. So that's a pretty specific geographical boundary. The R2 zone is a specific distance from the road. So they're based on measurements, but we also have digital tools now. So there's an interactive virtual zoning map that you can zoom in pretty much as far as you want to. What's even cooler, I think, is that I can pull that up on my phone. Anybody can pull it up on their phone. You can use your phone's GPS location system. So you can walk on a property and actually see where you are in relation to the zones. I think most importantly, we would deal with it at the time of development. So if somebody applies to do something on the land, we would look at it. We would figure out which zone it's in. If it is, right on the boundary, then I'll probably come out to the property and, use GPS and walk around with you, and we'll figure it out. It's really a question at the time of development, but we definitely have the tools, and I think they're fairly accessible. And I'm happy to help anybody figure it out.
Sure. Perfect. Thank you very much. With those small questions answered, I guess I would just go on to offer my personal comments on the document. I think overall, bylaw document like this and the regulations contained therein is nothing new to the town of St. Andrews. But I think, as is a common theme here, we're now talking about the new town of St. Andrews that includes obviously Bayside and Shamcook, which I think are historically, obviously they're still zoned as rural. But there was a different identity, I think, associated with those zones that was not necessarily shared and overlaid with the previous town of St. Andrews. I think the PAC is designed to function as an extension of the public. And what I see from the public is that they are very dissatisfied with how this sort of delineates those differences in the rural zones based on the past. And I think, like other comments were made here, land ownership like that is sometimes associated with an identity, a rural identity, which can be maybe even more broadly associated with a New Brunswick identity. So I would have to say that the rural zones are highly restrictive, and I say that negatively, unfortunately. And those would be my comments, I guess, for council to consider when adopting this document. Thank you.
I thank you. Over to you, Mr. Kerr.
All right, I'll make this quick. Page 20, under section 3.6 amendments. I just have a question. So where it says section B, where the application involves rezoning of an area of land from one type of zone to another, included whereth the signatures of at least one owner of each parcel of land to be rezoned. So does that mean if I'm going to rezone my land, if I want to rezone my land to industrial and my neighbors are farmers, I only have to have his one signature?
No, so that what all this is saying is that if you want to rezone your land, you have to be an applicant. So you can't apply to rezone somebody else's land unless they've agreed to it.
So I guess what I'm getting at is I don't feel like it's enough to get one signature based on the way I interpret this to rezone my land. Should it not be more of a 1 kilometer type mail out that we do now for different changes?
So rezonings go through actually a fairly extensive public process, including public hearings and all that. So what this is really saying, this isn't about other property owners in the area. This is about you. And there could be a scenario, what this is preventing is somebody saying, I think your land should be zoned, right now your land is zoned industrial, but I don't want it to be zoned industrial because I don't want you to do that thing. So I'm going to apply to council to rezone it to R1.
Right.
That's what this is saying you can't do.
Okay. And are there any bylaws? I didn't notice any, especially for the rural areas that control unsightly properties.
So there's a separate, it's not part of zoning.
Okay.
It's a local government act bylaw called the dangerous and unsightly premises bylaw. And the town has that. I might let Mr. Spears.
How
I
talk
was
about
gonna say,
that.
it's been extended into Bayside and Shamcook, and we've had at least one action that we've taken out in that area. So we are using it successfully.
And how is
Ish.
that being broadcasted to the Bayside and Shamcook?
I don't know, if broadcast is quite the word, if people come
Well-
in with, because it's, no, what I mean though, it's complaint driven.
Right.
So if someone comes in and says, my neighbor, whatever, and then we'll investigate. So we have the authority now to investigate that. If you believe we should put that out there, we can. We went through the normal bylaw adoption process to put it out, and that's been over a year ago, if not
You would have had a
2024.
public hearing, even though it wouldn't have been required.
Yeah. So, but if you
Okay,
feel,
okay,
we could put it in our newsletter, for instance, maybe it's an item just to advise people that it's something that people are,
That would
And,
be a good one. Yeah, use that newsletter.
yeah, yeah. And I feel like people are going to come out of the woodwork and give their views on this. I almost feel like it would be good to have a column where if you live in zone 1, this is what you had before compared to this is what you're getting tomorrow. Just so
Already
it's
done.
black and white. Like, okay.
It's on the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. That's really, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay.
Just in terms of process, so I do have those few specific things. Should I address those now and then go back to everybody?
Well, we're bumping up against our 9 o'clock kind of thing. I'm okay to keep going. I'd look for consensus to keep going. I don't know how involved this portion would be, but
Don't think it should be too involved.
if there's a desire to have a special meeting, it has to be before March 2nd, or maybe give me a little bit of time, maybe by the end of February would be good. But if anyone's interested to carry on tonight, that's also an option. Anyone have major objections to continuing? Minor objections to continuing. All right. Let's hear it, Xander.
Okay, it's only 4 slides.
Okay. Oh, slides. Well.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was already brought up. Okay. So yeah, this is the one that was brought up. So what Councillor Harland was referring to, there was more U2 zoning in a previous draft. It extended along Montague and Far and kind of in between. And this draft that was reduced to properties that are either already institutional, already MR1, basically properties that already have zoning similar to that. So the expansion of the U2 zone, I guess the promoting more opportunities for growth would be along Water Street, which would be more of the mixed use zone. Currently, this is an area I'm kind of up here where there's been some comments. Well, if we've got U2 over here, even though it's mostly wetland and C2, should there be U2 here? The area around MBCC, not quite sure. And then this property here is the Wellesley United Church, and probably should be U2, it's just missed on the map. So if PAC has any guidance for council on how to address the U1 and U2 zoning, specifically in those areas, but even more generally, I think that would be really helpful.
Sandra, I think that area by the community college, I think, is that Queen Street? There's currently like the equivalent of MR1s there on both sides.
Okay.
Charlotte County Housing Unit, 4 unit and 1, and then the Wabanaki Housing Unit on the other is what that is.
Yeah, so the U1 zone is very similar to the service residential zone. You can do 4 units. Can't really do main commercial uses. You can do basically home-based businesses up to a certain size. The U2 zone, you can have small scale main commercial uses and up to 8 units, but there may be a size limitation that reduces that further. So you can think about that. This is kind of related, and this is a response to feedback heard. I guess it was at the municipal plan public hearing, but we've heard some of these things about the zoning bylaw as well. So this is addressing some of the concerns around too much densification too quickly, ensuring that historic character is maintained. So there's some tie-ins to the heritage bylaw and preventing those properties from being subdivided. The street network is a very important part of the National Historic Site. So having new public streets is probably practically not likely in the town plat, but could be avoided. And this does push some things to PAC for terms and conditions. So it's actually really great to get your thoughts on this. This isn't something council has explicitly asked for at this time. But we did think that council might want to respond to some of the public concerns that were heard. And this is a way to do it. I can come back to this one. I think the last one is actually fairly simple, and I can give you, I think, pretty clear direction on what we sort of think the right way to go is. So Navy Island, we put a portion of it into the C2 zoning. Currently, it has its own zone called the Navy Island zone. There's actually a lot of work that went into creating that zone. I think it was before the Z21, and it kind of got carried into it. And it has very specific standards that really limit development to very small things that don't have an impact. So looking at it closer, we feel like this should probably all be C1. There are portions of it that are in the nature trust that will not be developed ever. Those are the current C1 on the, I guess you'd say, the kind of north side of the island. Given the amount of work that went into developing these standards specifically for Navy Island by residents of St. Andrews and property owners on Navy Island, probably makes sense just to have a little overlay zone that takes those standards and puts them over the C1 zone. So you could still develop a very small dwelling in that overlay, even if there wasn't one currently, and it would follow all the standards in the current Navy Island zone. It's kind of a sandbar. There's not a lot of water. This is not a place for significant development.
Yes, please.
One of the things that I do remember, and I think the recommendation was to go in its own zone, was because of the inability to provide services there.
Mhm.
And I believe the current zoning says something along that lines.
Yeah.
And so I'm just worried if you mix it into these other zones, then there's a inherent representation that we can provide police, fire, garbage, for instance, which realistically we can barely provide. Police kind of, garbage no, and
Yeah, I mean, that
fire.
could go, those were other things in this overlay zone. I don't, for like zoning, it probably isn't legally necessary. I don't think it would hurt to put it in there. So that there could be more of that zone that's carried in, and I don't see any concerns with that.
I lost you.
Okay.
So,
I don't know if I need my mic. I
Yeah,
do.
what person
So you were suggesting that it be left as the current zone it is?
Well,
rather
or that you have to have some restrictions. So my understanding, again, and I was here when it was rezoned, it was like mid 2000s, 2007 or 8 or something like that. But part of it was because they're in the developable areas, we'll say, people wanted to put small cottages and
Right.
things, wasn't the sizes. But under our understanding of the Municipalities Act at the time, that anything within a zone you had to provide a certain level of services to.
Right.
And it's just because of that, where it is, it's impossible to. So one of the recommendations wasn't just to conserve it at the time, it was to basically say to the homeowners that you're kind of on your own, like we can't provide any levels of service out there
Right.
because of its location. And I just want to make sure that distinction is still there. And maybe the Community Planning Act may have changed at the time.
Yeah,
forget-
I know exactly what you're talking about. Like it's in, if you look at Z22, the Navy Island zone, it says these properties will not get these services. I don't think it hurts to have that in there. I don't know if it's necessary at this time, but I think keeping that in, it's not going to hurt anything, and it's accurate. So
Well, but I guess that's the point. It's not that, yeah, it's just again, I think under the Local Governments Act, if you're within a municipality, you're expected certain levels of services, whoever the provider is. And I think that was one of the driving factors. So maybe it's a legal opinion we have to have looked at again, but that was kind of the thing, because it also went on the building permits at the time, I think. I don't know if there's been any building on there for years, but that they'd write a letter to the people acknowledging that you couldn't, that if you're going to build a house there, that you didn't have these provision of services that would normally be expected on the mainland.
So under C1, if we kept it as C1, then it could only have a secondary use if there was an existing building or structure with a pre-existing use. Otherwise, it's strictly conservation.
So what I am recommending to PAC that they recommend to council is change it to the C1 zone, but create a Navy Island overlay zone
Okay.
that says you can have one dwelling as long as it meets all the standards that are in the current Navy Island zone. So we're really just porting it over.
Okay.
We're porting over the current Navy Island zone using the C1 zone and an overlay zone to essentially not change anything there.
Okay.
That's it. That's all I have.
Can you
I
go
can-
back to your second
Yes.
slide? And do we have to do this? Do we have to do this tonight? Shit.
It's a 30. The only thing I want to, I want to revert back.
My brain.
Well, we made the motion, just so you know, we made the motion, I think in early February, which gave you 30 days to respond, if I'm not mistaken, under the act. Is why you have to the end of the month. You could meet next week in our
Mhm.
special meeting. But just to backtrack a little bit, concerning the first variance we looked at tonight, there was discussion about signs facing water.
Yeah.
Now we said you might want to revisit or make a recommendation. to
Yeah, I
council.
would actually say council should make sure that the zoning bylaw does not allow signs facing the water.
Not just discourages, but
Of any size?
like rejects.
I mean, probably of the fascia sign, wall sign. We kind of changed fascia signs to wall signs in this version. And they have a certain size allowance.
I don't disagree, but I think Madam Chair, we'll just have to be careful because I'm thinking of the Market Square area. There's buildings along there that might have signs that are kind of facing the water. You just have to be careful of the way you word it.
But we'll
Also,
probably-
that could be where, I just mean that could be where the natural front of the building is.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying is just
Oh, I see.
to be
I think limiting it to one I would say per use in the building. Because sometimes you have buildings with multiple businesses in them. But Judy made a really good point that in the current central commercial zone, you're going to want to put your sign on the Water Street side, and you only get one, and you have to
Right.
come to PAC for variance.
Yeah.
That's we probably want to continue that, but have that be for all of Water Street.
Yep.
No, it's not up there.
Well, it sort of is all of Water Street right now, right?
No.
Because-
The mixed use zone is very strange.
So where does that begin? I just thought the motel was kind of in it on its own.
I think I think that's right. It's past Princess Royal. Well, there's two sides of it. On that side, yes, it's after Princess Royal. I think after the Drew Haven. I think that's the last central commercial. I think on the other side, I know the liquor store is in the mixed use zone. So everything on that block is going to be mixed use.
So isn't that like Edward Street or? Oh,
So then I might say something like council should ensure that that waterside wall signs are not permitted unless that is the front of their building or something to that effect.
Edward Street.
yeah.
That's the limit. of The current mixed use zone.
And do we agree we're going to adopt the Navy Island recommendation? I think that's an important one. I agree with what Sandra said,
Mhm.
to do the Navy Island overlay.
Yeah.
As part of the present conditions of the C1.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are recommendations that we're going to make. So, yeah.
Okay, now I gotta get that other thing back up on
Yeah.
screen. Those are the easy ones. I think these are a little bit trickier.
But the only one can barely read that slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can barely read it too.
Feel free.
Oh. Oh,
Oh,
this is a newish computer. That's not even the right screen.
Carpenter doesn't blame his tools, Xander, come on.
I blame my computer all the time.
I've never heard that one.
Here, take your tools.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, do you want to do it, Chris?
Oh, I can't wait to use that one.
There we go.
Really good at home.
If you hit control and hold it down and scroll in with your mouse, with your wheel on your mouse, if you have one. No, not
No.
working. Okay.
I think it's because it's in a slide.
Yes.
I don't want to touch anything else. I can read it. Notwithstanding anything else contained within the zoning bylaw, except for, this is a town plat and environs overlay zone. So historic business district's different. This would be the town plat. Except for the development of an accessory dwelling unit, any pre-existing lot in the town plat that contains a single unit dwelling as a main use shall not be developed into multiple dwelling units, institutional uses, or small-scale commercial uses, except where that new development is contained within the footprints of an existing main building or accessory structure, or it has to go to PAC for terms and conditions. So as long as you stay within the footprint of your single unit building, it's a by right development. As long as the use is allowed in the zone, the footprint of the building is expanding for any of those uses. Single unit dwelling is expanding, no issue. But any other uses, it comes to PAC for terms and conditions.
So those are great guardrails in terms of protecting the town plat.
They would certainly restrict development within the town plat and housing. It would make it a little bit trickier for housing. I'll just keep going because I think they're all in kind of the same vein, and I can see the debate that's going to happen. Developments that involve the subdivision of lots using existing frontage on public streets shall be a particular purpose subject to the terms and conditions of PAC, specifically looking at architectural characteristics of nearby properties listed within the Heritage Conservation Bylaw. So it's not any nearby properties. It's if there happens to be one of those local historic places listed in the Heritage Conservation Bylaw. And those properties would also not be allowed to be subdivided. And I mentioned the public streets. So it would send, so the guardrails, yes, it's adding guardrails, making it harder to develop infill housing, harder to increase density.
Harder, but not impossible, because they
Well,
can,
not impossible.
because they can. So I guess when I read everything we've received as a council and listened to, I would say, though the protection of the town plat would be one of the most significant areas of concern, where I think, just as I think that we need to do some incremental, hopefully some incremental changing in terms of the rural areas, I think that we need to do incremental changing within the town plat and the protection of that. So I personally like those. Because it also, sorry, if you go back to the first slide, it allows for some densification sort of on the outskirts, right?
Yeah, those would all be basically everything here is in the town plat and environs. So even in the, this isn't, it's kind of zone agnostic. It would apply in the U1 and the U2 zones where there's a single unit dwelling. So if there's already an apartment, it has the ability to expand vacant lots, existing vacant lots. There's certainly potential there. I think what this is trying to address specifically, which is a concern that has been heard, is demolishing properties to develop new multi-unit buildings. I will say I actually met with the city of Fredericton last Friday, and they had a similar kind of challenge they were trying to work through. They came up with a very, very, very complicated mechanism to do it. I understand why they did it that way. I think for St. Andrews, it's a good balance. but I think there's another side to it that it's not saying they're not allowed. It's not saying you have to get a rezoning, you have to get a variance. It's saying terms and conditions. So there may be cases where terms and conditions can't be met. So application is effectively turned down. But it's not quite a by right use. It's a conditional use. So it's, you're adding potentially a month or two to a process. But the expectation is that there will be terms and conditions that allow it to proceed.
Right.
So, as a test case, I don't know if you ever remember saying it, but I think maybe a year ago, there was a lady came in, she wanted to do a ADU.
Mm-hmm.
And there now, looks great.
Mm-hmm.
So would that be harder for her to do?
Except for the development of an accessory dwelling unit. So an accessory dwelling unit is exempt from this.
Oh, yeah. So she was able to do her garden home.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that would be,
I think
that would be
good.
exempt.
Yeah. So that, she had to come for a variance because of the size.
The size of
I
it,
think.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
It's possible that might still be a variance that's required in certain
Right.
cases.
Right, but that was her aging in place plan.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Another,
that's
I think
lovely.
another good argument for ADUs.
Yeah.
Are these recommendations or is this feedback?
No, I was just asking a question.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm
for me?
sorry. I'm apologizing I meant for Xander.
These, I would say this is a way for council to address
I see.
some public concerns.
Okay.
That have come through letters and at the public hearing.
Okay, great. So I have to write all this down.
I can email it.
Yes, please.
That would be better.
I think it's actually in the report.
JLST.
Oh, you did put it in
It's
the
in the, I
report?
think they're in the report.
Oh, which report is that?
I don't think we,
I don't think we didn't get a report in the package.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just got
That would've been
notice that we're
great.
going to be talking about it. This is kind of where it
Okay.
ended.
I'll send that report.
Thank you.
It's really just about these items.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
It
that's,
says, give any views that you think are appropriate on the rest of the bylaw.
and
Here's some
those will
specific
be on
items
the
to
list.
consider. Yes.
Okay, beautiful. I know exactly where I need to go with that one. And then just the, sorry. Okay, then the first one with the zoning with regards to, yeah. What,
So
You
I would
just want me to just say review them?
for the Wellesley Street one. That one, if you follow the rest of the concept, that should be U2.
okay,
It's a
okay,
church right now.
yes.
That,
So we're just recommending that they review those locations.
well, I think it would be helpful if there was an actual recommendation on should these properties here stay U1 or should they become U2?
I see, okay.
Should these up here stay U1 or become U2?
I'm looking for a single recommendation from the committee, not an individual opinion.
Yeah,
Ideally, yes.
Can you, are we doing this right now? If so, can you explain really quick again what the differences between U1 and U2 is?
yeah.
U2 allows for main small scale commercial uses up to 8 apartment or any 8 dwelling units. And institutional uses. So I'd say it's kind of like your MR1 institutional zone, mixed use zone currently. and U1 is kind of like the serviced residential. So another way to think of it, should those be upzoned or should they more or less stay what they are now?
And the one on Harriet. Where? Mm.
The U3 is there?
Can you show me on that map?
Are you talking about these here?
Yeah,
That's the gas station.
Right across the street.
right across the street.
Yeah.
Yep,
U2.
that's already U2.
Yeah, this is Harriet, Olive, Harriet.
Yes.
Well, it's not.
Oh, right
it's not
now,
U2
right now it's
now.
service residential.
It's service residential.
Yeah.
I guess another way to look at it, folks, is for instance, is we have an MR2 zone in our current bylaw, but nothing zoned that.
Mm.
And you know, council has taken a case by case basis to upzone it. And so maybe undeveloped lands, you could decide that maybe could be left as U1 and then as proposals come in, could be upzoned. It discourages housing. But again, it goes back to along the plat. It may address some of the fears of residents.
So we're sort of suggesting to put them as U1, and then if development plans come forward, then the U2 rezoning would be an
I'm
option.
just saying that maybe Xander will have a different view of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But that's way of doing it.
Kind of feel like the Wesleyan Church should be the same as the rest of the churches on King Street.
Yes.
Yeah, that one I think is pretty clear.
And I kind of feel like the community college should probably be all the
U2
same.
around the community college.
I think so, yeah. Oh, but that's not just the community college. So there's quite a bit of tree zone there too, isn't there?
Up, you mean north of Argyle Court?
Yeah.
Yeah, near the community college. I'm thinking about here. That's what I'm calling near the community college right there.
Yeah.
So those ones I think U2 probably does make sense. Up here,
Yeah, I don't know what
So
you.
those are all pretty well like single
yeah,
homes, right?
yeah.
So is there a thought that changing the zoning
I actually-
recommendation would spur development?
I think
in
it would
the
make more
Prince William?
sense to change these properties here on the north side to U1, where they're essentially all in a wetland. There's very little development potential there.
Right.
And then at least there's consistency in the overall concept of it.
And then I would think too for the other one, because it's close to the college, so more housing potential, commercial potential to support the housing that's there. Because it's quite far from other commercial opportunities.
So leave the property around Argyle Court as a U1, not leave, sorry, designate as a U1 and U2 just south of that by the MBCC should be a U2. And then review the zoning for the Wellesley United Church and align it better with the rest of the churches around town.
That
Okay,
would give, I think, council very helpful direction.
But then
Okay,
I'm still confused about Harriet.
It's currently slated as U2 in this current map as proposed. It's service residential currently, because this is just still in the proposal stage. But the recommendation off of this current draft is that it be U2, which would allow up to 8 residential units.
Just on Harriet.
Harriet and the parts of Water and Prince of Wales. So it's kind of that around on the arterial streets or collector streets.
But I guess specifically to that one you were asking about, Counselor.
This is Andrew. Maybe just to give a little context, which streets did it used to go all the way the length of?
Montague and Parr on both sides. So there would have been a U2 corridor in the middle.
Right.
And my sense from the discussion we had with council was to remove that corridor, but keep it around the edges.
Yeah.
Which would include Harriet Street.
So it kind of goes from the Algonquin and this building down Harriet. And it goes around
Well, pretty much.
pretty much what?
The loop.
Oh, all of Water Street.
Mm-hmm.
But that goes into the business district, historic business district.
Yeah.
The historic business district is, I believe it is all in the U3 zoning.
But it's got special.
And that's got the special overlay zone.
Yeah.
Where everything goes to council. So those are going to be very tightly controlled if anything's changing outside of the building.
These are recommendations, not necessities from the PAC to council, and you'll still have an opportunity to discuss it further and process it.
Yeah, and if you think a specific property should be changed or anything, as a counselor, you could make an amendment, a motion to amend at some time or bring it up to council too.
Okay. How are we still processing?
So just, sorry,
No?
just to go back to what you said, Chris, so in the current municipal plan, the area is designated MR2, right?
Well, no, let's take Compass House. Well, that's a bad example, but we'll take Compass Housing. Previously, it was a tourist commercial, I think, when the hotel was there. And in order for that particular building to be built, it was to MR2. And so MR2 doesn't exist by right anywhere under the current bylaw, that it has to be upzoned, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say the MR2 is closer to the U3 zone, and the U2 zone, even the residential part of it, is closer to the MR1 zone.
Okay.
But I will say that the U2 and the 8 units is what's throwing a lot of
Yeah.
the proponents, opponents. I mean, it's a bigger discussion of more housing versus not, but it's the people that are opposed to it don't think densification is right in the plat, I guess is a short summary of it, which goes against what the government's looking for and some of the things, but that's how I interpret the comments that are coming in.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to go back to some of the comments that came in during the background study phase during the survey. That would have been the broadest consultation that happened. And there were certainly some comments around, the comments that we're referring to now, concerns around densification, but there were just as many comments around the need for affordable housing, the need for walkability, the need for more families. So I think when you triangulate the statements of public interest, the broad feedback we've received, this feels like the right triangulation of that. there's the potential to limit conversions of single unit dwellings. That's a way to address some of those specific concerns. But at the same time, that will make it a little bit harder to develop affordable housing, which is we've heard very clearly through the consultation is, and we know is an issue.
Do you feel we've covered everything? Did you have anything more to add? I'm going to review now what I picked up from the discussions, and let's see how I did. It would appear that, okay, here we go. So one of the observations was that the tree cutting in other zones should also strive to protect the trees, right? You wanted to not necessarily extend, but there's a clause in here that talks about tree cutting, and you wanted that to sort of be more broadly applied.
I'm okay with you leaving that out if you'd like, just because it was part of my question and answer to understand if there was another opportunity outside the zoning
Okay.
bylaw, and I
Okay.
think there is.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, yeah, if I
And most of mine, I think, might fall
do you
into
think
that
probably were
category.
answered. Okay. Well, we had some observations that we needed to more clearly define rooming houses, right? So that's a good one to leave in there. Okay. So on the page where the R3 zone was discussed, we want to maybe check to see if we can tie the zone more to the viability of the land for agriculture purposes. We find that the subdivision restrictions in the zone are of a concern. We are questioning whether or not there is flexibility in like the acreages, some of the dimensions that were noticed. And also whether or not there's an option for property owners to opt out of this zone. One in there. Xander was going to email me the slide with about 2 or 3 points on it, right?
Mac has already emailed the report.
Oh, he has?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go back then. All right, so more generally, not necessarily applying to a page or a zone or what have you. The bylaw document is not new, but the amalgamation is. And there's some concern that the identity of rural versus urban is not being properly considered. The public seems dissatisfied with some of these provisions, and we find that the rural zones are highly restrictive in development. I wrote that down. Don't need to write that down. Ensure, oh boy, I got to read my writing here. Okay. Ensure more conservation easement properties. Oh, this is where I was going to write down all your stuff about Navy Island, but we're going to recommend that they change the zone on Navy Island to the C1 zone, but create a Navy Island overlay. And we would like to take the opportunity to define the restrictions to the provision of services over on Navy Island, like fire, police, and garbage. We would just like to think we should take the opportunity to define that while we can. Council should ensure that the water side wall signs are not permitted unless the water side is the front of the building. Protection of the town plat is paramount and should be reflected in development options. We feel that the Wellesley Church should be rezoned. I think I just reviewed all these, rezoned to the same as the other churches along King Street, for example. The north side property on the Prince of Wales, we feel should be zoned as a U1. And the one property close to the college, the south of the college, should be zoned as AU2. Did I miss anything? I'm not very good at note taking.
That is a really tall task. Yeah, thank you. Just the one thing I would like to not lose track of perhaps is ensuring that condominium developments in single multi-unit buildings
Right, that was that
are
bare land.
permitted in higher intensity zones.
Okay.
I think there's just a little bit of
Yeah.
lack of clarity about whether or not that's the case right now.
Yeah, that's a helpful comment.
Allowed in higher intensity zones.
Yeah, ensuring condominium developments consisting of single multi-unit buildings are permitted in higher intensity zones. Yeah, and I guess I'll my personal opinion of the second slide and the measures to address public concerns. I'm feeling offside of those because I do think they are quite restrictive to more housing. And I participated in the housing event this fall. And so that public comment is fresh in my mind as well about the need for more housing and more affordable housing. So I just fear that those are going in the wrong direction, but I don't want to assume that the committee feels that way. And I will say similarly on the R3 zone and the minimum 5 acre lot proposal, which would impact me personally, by the way. I see good public policy in that proposal. I think it will be unpopular policy. I would agree with that concern, but I think it is good practice. I think it helps reduce sprawl. I think it does help protect those land for what will be increasingly important uses in the future. Mm-hmm. So I think I appreciate that staff are bringing that recommendation forward, because I think that's what we would want, is strong planning advice. So I think that's what we got. Mm-hmm. But the challenging part is reconciling it with what the public thinks. And so, yeah, maybe there's an in between, but I think being able to at least communicate the rationale mm-hmm. and the merits of it is important.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
So could we add something about that?
Yeah.
Because I think to Rebecca's point, it is important. The public policy around it is strong. It's just such a leap from where we were to where we want to go. It feels like a gulf to try and navigate through. So just that we recognize that it is good public policy. The challenge is the challenge is
mitigating impacts on
thank you.
Individuals.
Thank you. Yeah. Yep.
All right.
My gosh, I don't.
So I don't know how we're going to read this motion into the record. Again, I've just reviewed them all. How do you want the motion to look?
Motions.
Okay. Okay.
The views of the PAC and council regarding zoning bylaws.
Okay. Catch that? Did you catch
The
that?
good thing is it's recorded,
Yes,
so I can type it up after.
I like that.
And I think I know what most of it means too, so.
Well, I think as well, similar to I think it should be said, I mean, similar to the municipal plan, I like the format of this. I like the tables in it that kind of just lay out the zones and what's allowed. I like how it will be easy to refer back to as we carry on our business as a PAC. So, you know, from my perspective as a non-expert, I find being able to navigate these documents to be really super important, and having a good layout is just that sort of roadmap to make sure that that happens. So those are my comments about it. Other than that, I guess we would entertain a motion on these observations. So moved. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right, so we've listed our observations. Some will be added just as discussed through some report that I've received. And so all those in favor of me writing all those observations into a letter, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you all so very much for your hard work on this file. It certainly is a big one. And now we move to PAC member comments, if there are any at this time. No, looks pretty quiet. No closed item. Oh,
I would just like to say, I really value having had multiple discussions around these documents. I really value this discussion and, you know, being required to challenge myself in terms of my thinking around some of it. So thank you very much.
That's awesome. All right. So thank you for that comment. There are no closed items tonight. And that being said, we're looking at 9:47. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Please submit your overtime claims. Good night, everybody.
Pretty good sense of it. There's like, there's a lot of similarities, but there's all little nuances.